Welcome back. Americans, of course, plenty to be upset about. A bad economy, corrupt politicians who clearly pick winners and losers before your eyes based on who's giving them money. And for those of us lucky enough to still have jobs, there's always the pressures in the workplace. And sometimes all that pent-up anger, well, if you've watched the show, you know what I'm talking about, can get the best of you. And that appears to have happened to a JetBlue flight attendant, Steven Slater, who decided to quit his job in what we will call dramatic fashion. Yesterday afternoon, the flight attendant was working, landed in New York. They're on a flight from Pittsburgh. Passenger decided to get up a little early, grab her luggage while the plane was still taxiing. Of course, that's not allowed. Slater tried to address the issue, getting into a heated confrontation with the passenger, and in fact ended up getting smacked in the head by that passenger's carry-on luggage. It was at that point that Slater could take no more. He got on the PA system, dropped a string of F-bombs saying, quote, "To the effing a-hole told me to F off. It's been a good 28 years. I've had it." On the PA of the plane. He then proceeded to grab a couple of beers off the drink cart, pull the emergency exit, hop the slide, and make a dash to his car. I mean, that's good stuff. New York police later arrested the man at home. He has now been turned into some kind of a folk hero online for his audacious and outrageous actions aboard the plane. He already has more than 35,000 people who like him on Facebook, and that just from the news cycle so far today. And if you think air travel can be stressful, how about a trip through the McDonald's drive-thru? 25-year-old Melody Duchesne went absolutely McCrazy when a McDonald's in Toledo would not sell her chicken McNuggets back on New Year's Day. Granted, it was 2:30 in the morning. The restaurant was still, according to the menu, only serving breakfast. As you can see, the denial of the McNuggets didn't go over real well with Miss Duchesne. So are we just talking about your average occupational hazards here, or is the American pressure cooker and the culture of overt unfairness, corruption in our society, in the tax code, in the way the government treats all sorts of special interests, taking from one, giving to another, is it starting to boil over? Joining us is Shannon Munford, an anger management expert with the Daybreak Counseling Service. And Shannon, it's a pleasure to have you here, not only for your analysis, but because I myself can fly off the handle from time to time, so maybe you can help me too. But let's start with your analysis of all this. How much of this is a reflection of the sorts of things that somebody like myself might speculate, as I just did?
Well, you know, I'm not sure if we're more angry in America, but we sure are expressing it in some unique ways.
In other words, is that meaningful? In other words, is it mean more if I get angry and go home and vent to my spouse or my friends, or if I grab a couple of beers, jack the emergency thing, and slide off the airplane?
No, I mean, the first thing you said would be something we would rather everybody do. But we do see incidences in America where people are taking their anger out in some creative ways, some destructive ways. The fan base that this individual has is not surprising, but I doubt that anybody would be...
What are people attracted to? When you hear the story, whether it's me telling it, you read it, it's in the papers, everybody else is talking about it. What is it about this story that is so attractive?
Well, it's something we'd all love to do. We'd all love to curse out our boss or quit our jobs. But in this economy, I doubt there'd be a lot of people duplicating that behavior.
Can I turn your attention to your friendly neighborhood host, being myself, who's had a couple of anger incidents on this show? I'd like to show you, if I could, a sampling. I had a Tea Party guest at one point who was dodging my questions. He wouldn't answer the question. He was talking about how everybody at MSNBC was a bunch of anti-Semites. I was like, I don't even run MSNBC. Anyway, I couldn't take it, and it ended up a little bit like this. I'd love to have your analysis. Are you a guest on my show? Do you have any intention of answering any of my questions?
Racism.
Let me ask you a question, Mark. Because I don't want to continue with this. You're wasting valuable oxygen. Can we please cut off this man's microphone? He has no interest in answering my questions. Now, ideally, I wouldn't behave that way in public. Yet, when faced with some of the talking points and the evasion and the nonsense that comes with a job like the one I have had these personal failings in this case where I lost my temper with that gentleman. How do I stop that?
Well, one of the things that we noticed that anger feeds anger. If you would have gave him his say, took a step back, maybe you would have gotten your point across.
So maybe if I wasn't so quick to jump down the throats of these characters, but was more patient, you're saying that it wouldn't turn out the way that it has on a couple of occasions.
Definitely. I see that you did lose your patience there.
Would the same advice that you would give to me apply, for instance, for the McNugget lady?
Well, the McNugget lady, obviously she was a little hungry, but it may look like she had some other consumption prior to even getting to that drive-through.
So you think there may be other substances that preceded her trip to the 2:30 a.m. McNugget run?
It's quite possible. Looking at her in this video, her bouncing through the window, there may have been some other things going around that she took part of earlier that evening.
And what about our folk hero, our main man, Mr. Slater? Can he take the Dylan Ratigan counseling advice you just offered me to back it up the truck, count to 5, let the person make their point, however totally insane and crazy they may be, and then address the issue in a disciplined fashion? Could Mr. Slater have done that as opposed to grabbing the beers and hopping out the window?
You know, he could have done that, but one of the best things he may have done is he may have did the right thing by quitting that job. Some jobs are just too stressful for some people, and he may have done himself a service and the public as a whole for quitting that job.
Count to 5 or count to 10 next time? For me, I mean.
Count to 10 backwards.
What do I do with
Maybe
the dead
in
air?
Spanish.
What about the dead air?
Well, it's not dead air if you're counting to 10. You're doing a public service to everybody watching.
That's all. 1,001, 1,002. I'll do it like that. A pleasure to have the conversation. Thank you so much for your analysis this afternoon. Shannon Munford, anger management expert with a Daybreak Counseling Service. Thank you, Shannon.